Somebody asked me recently what was my first step to moving out of perfectionism, out of overachieving, and cultivating, I guess, more acceptance, more of a kind of a state of being. And in doing so, what might be a first step for them? So, um, Mark Walsh once told me that there are only two answers to any question. As a teacher or facilitator, it's practice and it depends. And I think both of those are relevant here. So practice, 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 practice. I spent over 30 years practicing perfectionism, practicing overachieving, um, practicing this like form of self-brutalization. And yeah, I'm having to continually practice something else because it's that. Like, if I want to be able to do something else, I have to give myself the option. Like, I have to have another way of being that feels familiar enough, that feels safe enough, that feels reliable enough that I have a choice. Okay? So for me, that first step, I guess actually my first step was authentic relating. That was what brought me into the world of embodiment. And I have to say that was a real game changer for me. Up until then, I had been approaching self-development in this kind of very intellectualized way. Makes a lot of sense to me. That's how I had been taught to learn. I had a master's degree by this point. And so, yeah, it was really natural to me to think, oh, I have a problem. The answer is to go and find an answer in a book. Um, and and I was having a little bit of coaching, I think a little bit of therapy, but my sense was like some things were starting to shift, sure, but I wasn't really getting into like the underlying, like really into the depth of it. And I think for me that's where the world of embodied practice, the somatic experience is so important. Like for me, that's where I really started to see shifts in my life. So my first embodied practice was authentic relating. And I think that what that did for me was get me out of kind of looping in my head and into connection and into something that felt like more concrete. So, for example, I always thought that I wasn't doing like self-awareness practices right. That how do I describe this? That I was like noticing my internal experience and just immediately being critical of it. That this assumption that like I wasn't doing it right. And I remember my very first authentic relating workshop. There was like an opening circle, and each person was invited to speak for about a minute and reveal their internal present moment experience before passing it on to the next person. And I was already a little agitated at the beginning, but I was the I Don't Belong song was playing really loudly in my head. And I was watching like everybody in this group going around, and everybody was so eloquent, and they were just able to like articulate like what was going on inside them. And my perfectionist shame spiral kicked in. By the time it came to me, I was already in tears and could barely kind of like sputter out the words like, I don't know how I feel. I can't feel anything below my neck. And the feedback I got then and later on was like I was doing the thing. I was doing exactly the thing that I'd been asked to do, which was to share my present moment experience. But somehow I thought like I wasn't doing it right. And so for me, there was something about authentic relating, and especially as a verbal processor, I can really understand and be with myself much more easily when I'm speaking it than I can like in journaling or just thinking about it. So yeah, so there's something for me about authentic relating that kind of like took all of what was going on inside me and kind of put it out in a place where I was like, oh, it's this. And we're like, oh, okay, that's not wrong. That's my experience. And especially to then like be received with with kindness, with compassion, with curiosity and affirmation and things like that was really important for me as a first step. From there, I joined Mark Walsh's Embodied Facilitator course. It doesn't exist in quite the format that it did back in 2020. But that again was a real game changer for me. What I really love about the way that Mark approaches embodied work as a coach or a facilitator is like the first half of the course is all about like do it for you. I noticed this impulse in me. I noticed in a lot of coaches, teachers, facilitators that I come across. This kind of thing of like, oh, I found a new thing. I must immediately be able to take it out into the world and do it for other people. And what I really loved about the embodied facilitator course and Mark's approach was like really slowing down and really giving myself the opportunity to start to embody some of these practices first. And as part of that year, we were invited to pick a primary embodied practice. So we were like, what is the quality that we would like more of? And to pick an embodied practice that supported that. And for me, I picked yin yoga. The quality that I wanted to embody more of was being able to soften in the face of challenges. I had this real pattern of like white-knuckling. I still do. I'm working on it. White-knuckling through when things get tough. So really bringing kind of like an Ashtanga embodiment to yin. And so, yeah, the quality that I was really trying to practice there was, um, yeah, like finding my edge in a pose and then being able to like ease off a little bit to soften. And especially, I'm not as flexible as I think I should be. And I say that very deliberately, the should. And so, you know, I want to be able to go into these postures more deeply, but I learned from bitter experience that if I really pushed myself in a yin practice, I wouldn't be able to walk for a week. So yeah, to like to be with all these difficult emotions that were coming up for me because, you know, my body didn't look the way that I thought it needed to look. Like for example, like wide leg straddle, you know, when people like fold flat on the floor, I look like a little teddy bear, and my legs and arms and like my little, just like I don't go anywhere. It's just so pathetic. So to be with all of those emotions and all of those thoughts and all of those stories, and to sit with them, to sit and be present. So that was a really powerful one in Yin for me. Ecstatic dance was important. I was starting to travel to Bali, or had been traveling to Bali just before EFC, and so yeah, ecstatic dance. Like being able to like learn to move my body in this like free form way, like what is like follow the impulses that my body had to move, rather than like learning dance steps or you know like this very like uh form way of being. Ecstatic dance like really helped me access more kind of flow and movement in my body. And one hallmark I think of perfectionism, it's very rigid, very sort of linear, and yeah, there's a lot of stuckness. So yeah, and then most recently hula hooping, in my desire to kind of embody a little more playfulness, something that's a little more childlike and fun, and quite frankly, nothing matters least in the world than being able to twirl a plastic circle around. So yeah, hula hooping has been a practice of mine as well. But there's one like really important. So that's the practice part. The it depends part is like those are the practices that worked for me. Those were the things that I chose. Um, they will be different for you. Like thinking about like what is the quality that I would like to be able to embody more, and then you know looking around you, like what are the body-based practices that would support like that way of being. So you know if you're somebody who wants like more passion in your life, then maybe you want to learn to tango. Yeah. Maybe if you're somebody who needs to be able to stand up for yourself more, you want to pick a martial art. Yeah. What else could be helpful? So yeah, you kind of get the idea, hopefully. And if you don't, please ask. I'm happy to help you brainstorm. what ideas for embodied practices might be supportive for you. Um, but the important part of all of this, like it's not just about the practice that you choose, it's how you go about doing that practice. So for me, cultivating like more of this sort of softness, there was no point me like frog marching myself in this really like earthy, disciplined, I've got to do it at this time every week. Like I'm not embodying in the way that I'm showing up for that practice. I'm not embodying the thing that I want to do. I'm continuing to practice the thing that I'm already really good at. Okay. So yeah, paying attention to like how you're showing up for the practice is just as important as the practice you choose for yourself. So I guess the final thing I would say in terms of like a first step is to pick something. It's a first step. This is not about turning yourself into a whole different human being overnight because you don't need to. Like you're not broken. This isn't about fixing something about you. This is about recognizing that like you've got really, really good at one particular way of being, right? And that's great. Like getting it, being an expert in something is really useful. But if that's the only thing that you can do, then, you know, as the adage goes, if you only have a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. Yeah. So there's something about cultivating more range in your authenticity. Yeah, that these are not changing, these are just giving you access to more of yourself. So pick one to start with. You've got a whole lifetime of this. You do not have to change it all overnight. So a first step would be like, what is one quality that I would really love to be able to embody more? And if you're not quite sure, it can be worth kind of like paying attention to the people that you sort of slightly pedestal in your life. Like who, for me, for a long time, it was Elizabeth Gilbert. Not the kind of like the Eat, Pray, Love movie version, but like if you ever watch her on social media or done any of her workshops, like she's phenomenal. I pay attention to those people, and if you could steal, if you had like you know a magic thing that allowed you to like borrow their superpower, like what would that be? And start there, and start in an embodied way. You cannot think your way through this. Okay, this is like learning to ride a bike or learning a language. You have to practice. And so having a dedicated space, whether you're going regularly to a class, I would really recommend having a regular place that you go so that you're getting feedback, that you are being supported to be on your learning edge. It's not too difficult, it's not too easy. Yeah. As well as perhaps then like self-practice at home on a more regular basis. But whatever it is that you're doing, also bringing the quality of that into like how you're showing up for that practice. Otherwise, it's not really that helpful because all you're doing is practicing the thing that you know how to do already. So that that's my been a bit of my journey, and I hope that gives you some inspiration for perhaps a first or even a next step for you if you are somebody who is, yeah, ready to let go of some of the shackles of perfectionism. Somebody with like a little more space and movement and beingness in your life. I'd love to hear what this brings up for you. Feel free to comment below, send me a question. Yeah, I'd love to hear how this lands. All right, thanks so much.